This video is going to be less scripted and we'll go episode by episode, but we'll kind of skip around. I'll put timestamps for you if you don't want to watch the whole thing. I won't be nitpicking everything, but that there is some stuff I will go episode by episode. At the end, I'll jump around throughout the whole season, other than going by episode. Episode 1. I actually do like how they started the season. I think it was a good idea for them to start off with the main storyline timeline, going back to when the war was about to start, or not even the war, when the Fire Nation attacked. The way they changed why Aang left just made it less, you could say, I think they messed up Aang's reason for leaving. The way they made it seem like Aang just left after he was having a talk with Appa and they went for a drive, and then somehow got stuck in a storm in the ocean, rather than how it was in the animated series where Aang overhears them talk about sending him away, and because of that he makes an emotional, irrational, in the moment decision to leave, which is a better reason for him to have guilt of why he left than him just going for a drive, basically. Because that way you could say, like, even though it's not really Aang's fault, like, how would he know that when he left they were gonna get attacked? But it gives more reason to why he would feel guilt, or why someone might guilt him later on in the series for leaving, because it was more of his choice to leave than him not knowing he was going to come back, even though technically he didn't know he was going to come back with the other one either. But it just gives more reason for Aang to feel the guilt that he does throughout the series in both the animated one, and it would have made it better in this one too. That was one of my main ones. The other one was the genocide. They didn't use the genocide. They could have easily just shown up to that point and left it implied, or even just them jetpacking up there. What was the reason for them to have this genocide happen and show it other than it just being war? Because it doesn't show the power of the firebenders other than them jetpacking up a whole mountain to get to the air temple. And it almost makes it look like it could have been a fair fight with the airbenders. They basically just showed it for it to look cool. And everyone who has liked it, that I've seen talk about it, has just said it looked cool. It looked cool. Like this isn't happening right now today. Another part was Monkey Yatso. They just basically made him more of a martyr by showing him saving the kids. Like he was the only one that wanted to save the kids. And also getting taken out by Sozin. What was the reason for that? Other than, this is our big bad, this is our hero. We need to show that these are the bad guys, we need to show that these are the good guys. And not having him surrounded by firebenders kind of diminishes Gyatso's strength that is implied in the show. Other than that, I'm gonna just skip to Water Tribe, Temp Tribe. I'm not really gonna talk about the characters in this episode 1, other than Katara for the most part, and a little bit of Aang. But first, let's start off with Grand. What was that? What was that random monologue of her going into the intro like that? For this whole series, the most part, I think the acting on the adults was the one that was the weakest for me. Starting with Graham right there. Katara. Like from the beginning, you can already tell what they're doing with Katara. How she doesn't break Aang out of the iceberg because of her raw power and the anger that she feels because Sokka's, let's say it, misogynistic. And instead, she's trying to get a boat back. And we're just going to leave it. We're going to leave it there for right now because I do not want to get into it right now. We're going to go next to skip to the air temple. At this point, Aang just doesn't feel like Aang. He's not like, for the most part, throughout the whole series, Aang just talks in monologues. Like, he either talks in monologues or is telling someone like 3-sentence lines about some random thing about like the monks or something. Like, it's rarely ever a normal conversation. And even when it's a normal conversation, it's not like a kid having that conversation. And to kind of end it up, having Katara not take him out of the Avatar state at the air temple and having Gyatso do it kind of leads to things that I will comment on later on in episode 8 that don't hit the same as they wanted it to. And Aang not knowing anything about the Avatar and learning anything from Zuko's journal is also why. So no one at the air temple thought, like, so they're not even teaching any Avatar history or anything. He doesn't know who the Avatars are, what they do, what the Avatar state is, anything at all about the Avatars is kind of like just weird and just a little plot hole for him to need to talk to these Avatars at their little podium things. Where that thing, I don't think it's a bad addition to it. It kind of helps to bring in more of the Avatars, but it does isolate not having like a strong connection to a certain Avatar, like he did with Roku because it was the one before him. But I don't hate the addition of that either. I just don't like that he's doesn't know anything about being an Avatar at all, and like no one seems to know either, which is also kind of why they are not even talking about Homeboy learning the 4 elements. Or before we go into episode 2, I'm just gonna talk about Zuko's scar to get it out of the way, because honestly, they just need to shave the eyebrow. Shave the eyebrow, even if they don't wanna move any of that red eye, that black eye, because it does look bad. At certain times it looks okay, some times it looks like pink eye. But like, they just, even if they just shave the eyebrow down, like not literally shave, but you know what I mean? It would look 10 times better. Episode 2, yeah, what I was saying about the older actors, General Zhao's actor is not, it's just not it. He, like, basically the whole show he's kissing Zuko's ass and trying to manipulate him in a more slimy type way than being rude and like degrading how Zhao was. He never like tried to get Zuko on his side. It was more like he looked at Zuko as if Zuko was lower than him and he didn't deserve to be part of the Fire Nation. Whereas here, he, I think, thinks that, but the way he acts, like, the portrayal, I just didn't like the way they portrayed him at all. I don't mind also that they added him to the Kyoshi storyline, which makes sense. And that's also one of the things that I did like, how they combined episodes. I don't think they executed all of them, for the most part, great. But it made sense to combine a few to make it work. At this point, Katara still has no character other than wanting to learn waterbending. That's like all she ever talks about. And I guess we can move on to Kyoshi. Lind. Like I said, them cutting stuff is necessary. It makes sense, like, why they cut out the koi fish. One, it would cost a lot of money to animate those koi fish. Or, what's it called? CGI? Those koi fish. It's not necessary to the plot. Obviously, like, it helps with Aang's little character development of not letting the Avatar get to his head, but like, we don't need it. It did show his more childish side, but they could show that throughout the show without having him do these big money costing things. So I'll try to go in order for most of them, but like, I'm just gonna skip around, honestly. But I'll start with Avatar Kyoshi. How they did Kyoshi, I did not like. She looked cool, but that is not how Kyoshi talks. The way they made her talk was kind of like what they would think a strong female should be talking. Like, Kyoshi never needed to raise her voice or show a lot of emotion or scream in order to get her point across or be extra expressive with her face. In the show, they kind of made her like, they tried making her look tough and it didn't work. Kyoshi was always stern and to the point, and she is, I did this because it needed to be done, but not the way they did her. They made her very emotional, where Kyoshi is, I need to get this done and I'm gonna get it done. And that's what needs to happen instead of her little screaming fit. And then when she attacks at the end when Zuko comes, having her attack instead of Aang attack kind of takes away from the Kyoshi warriors, because while the Kyoshi warriors were fighting, and then it just turns to Kyoshi fighting and taking over, which looked cool. Like, that was probably one of my favorite scenes, but it takes away from the Kyoshi warriors because we don't even see them in action other than for like a few seconds. Which leads me to my girl, Suki. What are they doing to my girl? She became basically just Sokka's love interest, because what was the point of her? other than that, he doesn't learn anything from her, except it's the other way around, where she says that Sokka learned, or that she learned from Sokka about the world, where they flip it, which is weird. And this kind of where like the misogyny type part. But they're trying so hard to not make their show misogynistic by having a character that learns from not being misogynistic, and making the show misogynistic by diminishing all the strong female characters that are in the show, like Katara and Suki so far. But there is more to come. And the totem or whatever thing, the statues, like I said, it's not a bad thing, but like it wasn't necessary either. I get why they did it, because they probably didn't. They probably wanted to add more of the avatars in the storyline than the other one had, the OG had. But I also think that the only reason they added Kyoshi was the first avatar that she met was because of also that misogynistic part. That's my little like cliff note of why they did that. While I do like or don't care about the statue thing, why would, I guess this is season episode 1 stuff, why would Zuko's little miniature statues light up? Is it any statue that the avatar lights up then? So then everybody in the world would know that the avatar is already back if they have a little avatar statue. So then why would Zuko be scared about people finding out that Aang is back if they already know because of the little avatar statues? And that part I didn't like, where they could have easily made it the boat that they had in the background. If they weren't going to use the boat, they could have cut it off instead of having it as like an Easter egg for people, where they seem to love these little Easter eggs for the OG fans that don't mean anything. And that also could have been a cut to their budget, that they didn't need to put a whole boat in, which they could have saved money in to make the show better. And the scrolls, Katara's waterbending scroll, how they add it in the show kind of leads to them having to fix stuff later on, and what they kind of end up doing with a lot of things. Like, the scroll is one of these like loose ends that they then later have to fix in later episodes. So episode 3, this is where we get the one and only. Y'all know who I'm talking about. We don't even have to say his name. We just need to know he's got 2 little sword things and long black hair. You know who I'm talking about. It's Jet. So Jet's storyline overall, I think, was good. For this episode, at least. I think his acting, or I think the casting on him was good. His companions were pretty good. They all looked pretty similar to the animated series. I kind of got the vibe. Like, literally when I saw them, that's like the vibe I got. Like, you can like already tell like it was them. I like that whole part of that. I think adding him in the Amashu story, like I said, combining them was like a smart idea. I think they didn't necessarily have to have him in Amashu, but also like it wasn't bad to have him in Amashu. Also, his little fight scene was one of my favorites too. Him and Zuko, the actor who plays Zuko, I really like how their fight scenes look, especially Zuko. Zuko has probably one of my favorite of the fight scenes. Mostly in all of them, he delivers. Like, it looks good. And again, Katara, everything about her in this episode is about her learning waterbending and needing help from a man to tell her how she needs to use her emotions to be a better waterbender, which isn't bad, but it's just how they've been doing Katara that makes it bad. Like, she doesn't really learn from Jet a lesson, which I'll get into like in episode 4, because it's more in episode 4. Azula was the one that I knew they were gonna have the most trouble with, because in the animated show, she's literally voiced by a grown woman. And then also, you're not gonna get the same portrayal from a grown woman playing a younger girl, where the girl herself, like the characters, you could like vary in age. Like, Azula just feels older than how old she is. Like, she doesn't feel like a 14-year-old girl. So I knew that one was gonna be the hardest for them to be able to, the actors, it was gonna be one of the hardest for the actors to play. I didn't hate her. I didn't like her. The spy part was kind of whatever. Her crew, they were okay. Like, I actually liked Ty Lee when I saw Ty Lee. I actually like felt like that she was Ty Lee. May was okay. The Zula acting, I think in this episode, I didn't write anything about it. And that's pretty much it for episode 3. Oh, them having what are they called? The Mechanist there takes away from the storyline from the Air Temple of Aang. But again, I mean, if they needed to add it there, it was okay. that's not that big of a deal. How they gave Sokka a Troy Bolton storyline about how his dad wanted him to be a warrior, but he wanted to be like an engineer or whatever was weird. Like, they went with that route. Overall, I think one of my favorite things that they did was with Zuko's character. But yeah, I think what they did with him was honestly probably some of the best things that they did with the show. Katara and Aang. With them not building Aang and Katara's bond, how will it lead to the future? With Katara being Aang's anchor that connects him to the real world when he needs to cut that tether off. Like, how will this big bond that isn't there affect the future of the show? Which they could still build, but haven't right now. So episode 4. Bumi's acting. At first I didn't like it, but then it wasn't bad. Like, if I thought about it, I was like, yeah, he acts like that. I thought at first like he was being over dramatic in some of the stuff, but it wasn't that bad. What was bad was that prosthetic on his face. Especially when you get to the fighting scene. It literally just ends at his neck, or the start of his neck, you could say. It was so bad. And some of the wigs are really bad too. They should have saved money from doing all that extra stuff and put it into the actual practical stuff, like the scar, the wigs, the prosthetics, and all of that. And this one I'm gonna jump around is not, most of the stuff in this isn't gonna be in order. So if you're trying to get a beat by beat, I'm not giving you a beat by beat. I'm giving you like bulletin points of what I wrote down. So Bumi's little lesson. We'll start with his resentment actually, where it makes sense why someone would feel resentment of what happened with Aang not being there. I just don't think putting that on Bumi's character makes that much sense. It makes sense that even Bumi would feel that way, but seeing how like Bumi is supposed to be like this intelligent person, it just doesn't go with his character. It makes sense that someone would feel that way, but it just doesn't make sense that Bumi would feel that way, if that makes sense. Which is why, what lesson was learned from this? What lesson was Bumi trying to teach Aang in this, other than he needs to make sacrifices to save one person and not think outside of the box? Which is kind of why the cart scene, like, it hits for the OG fans, like the cabbage thing. It hits for the OG fan. Them riding in the cart, the mailing system carts, would do nothing for the new watchers or new viewers that are watching it, because they don't foreshadow it with a little flashback. They gave us a flashback of him making Appa's little whistle thing that we don't get till season 2, where they easily could have just done the exact same scene or even made it different and showed them on the actual things, writing down cards or something to do with the cards, or even saying, oh, one day we're gonna write the cards down or something. Like, it was just thrown in there as an Easter egg. But like, oh, see, we added this. You guys can't say it's bad because we're adding these little things, but these little things lead to nothing. Also, Iroh, like, the more, like, at first he was just kind of there, like, oh, okay, yeah, he's not bad, he's not that great either. He was just, it was okay. But I think it was in this episode where I started kind of disliking him. Like, especially was the conversation with the guard, the earthbending guard. He was being very like condescending to the guard, where like showing like, I'm better than you because I'm not in war right now. I'm not actively participating in war while you are. Like, this man isn't a war criminal. Like, this man didn't attack Ba Sing Se, what was it, 600 days or something like that? Like, he's any better than them. And then especially, there's this line he said about something about how we do bad things in war, like war changes someone. Something about war and how it brings out the worst in people or something like that. And like the guard agrees or something like that. The guard says something and then he's like, I wasn't talking about me or something like that. Like, aren't you a war criminal? You're a war criminal, right? Yeah, exactly. Sit down. That part I didn't like. Or even in the animated one, they're not afraid to show that Iroh isn't going to hurt these people, like how he burns the hands of the workers or the guards. Or in this one, they're like beating on him, like they're trying to make us sympathize with Iroh. So we feel, oh, he's supposed to be the good person that's just in the Fire Nation. while like blatantly showing it by making the Earthbender soldier the bad guy. And then they cut to his scene with when his son dies with like Zuko and everything. I don't think it was bad, but it wasn't. I think the OG one hits more. And that's why I want to know for like people that first watched it, if you're still here for some reason, does it hit hard as it did for like, because they play the song. They play the song in the back. That was manipulative. You knew what you were doing when you played that song. But yeah, I think that song is why it kind of hit a little bit. That scene was okay. I won't give them a 10, but it was okay. Which kind of, that makes me think that they're gonna rush season 2 because they're adding so much things from season 2 and season 1, like Ty Lee and May, Azula. Like, this makes me think they're gonna take out the Tales of Ba Sing Se because technically it kind of is filler because it just gives us backstories on the characters where like mostly just Iroh and Zuko's were like, I guess, the most important to the story, where it shows Zuko's changing but also still holding on to the past, or at least to May. And also like obviously Iroh's being one of the best ones on there. But like Aang's, it was just him basically making a zoo, and like Sokka's also was not necessary. It does show us like Katara and Toph bond, but like again, it's not necessary. So they could cut it if they needed to, which makes sense. I think that's what they're gonna do. There's, I think, a lot of expo dump in this episode too. So back to Jet and Katara. I think the lesson that Jet teaches Katara, which like her, or not the lesson, I guess, what Katara learns from Jet, like about how she can't just go around trusting everybody, is kind of lost because it's like they make Jet basically be, he's a bad guy, he's a terrorist, he's bad. Where like in the other animated show, it was more about Katara's trust being broken than just making this is a bad guy that Katara came in contact with. Which also, like how Sokka was talking about how saying that she needs to grow up. Basically, they're trying to make, they gave a lot of Katara's, not storylines, but not even characteristics either. But like how they made him basically be the one that was looking after them and not Katara. They're basically trying to give everything about Katara to Sokka. They basically took that part of Katara and gave it to Sokka, which is dumb. We'll just say that. And let's go to the caves. Again, like if they were fighting for time, why add season 2 stuff? They easily could have just taken out the caves and had them just sneak in some way. Like the song people, I forgot their name. I liked it, and I don't know if they were the voice actors because they sounded a lot like the one in the animated show. I did like how they animated the backstory of Oma and Shu and all that. And also how what's it called? Badger? No, they're not called Hold on. Yeah, Badger moles. The Badger moles. I think the Badger mole making it look like that is like, people were nitpicking everything about how like some of the bending looks bad. Like at that point, like you're just nitpicking everything, or how Momo looks bad. It's basically like a flying bat. Like, what do you expect it to look? It's a lemur. Have you not seen a lemur in real life? They're not cute. They're not cute. I liked how they animated, or CGI or whatever, the Badger mole, because like low-key it would be scary. But yeah, like went over the caves, that little thing. Oh, what was the point of having the caves? For just Katara and Sokka to hold hands and like sibling love and stuff like that. Like, I don't think showing another form of love is a bad thing than just what we think about love is. But I think the whole point of that episode is to show Katara and Aang's bond, and how their bond has grown since season 1 up to season 2. And it's also a big kind of character development that kind of foreshadows what's going to happen later on, which is also kind of needed because at this point, Aang and Katara have zero bonding or character development, or even the whole group kind of just feels like they're like classmates that have to do a project together, have never talked. At this point, we're halfway in basically, and it just feels like the characters are empty and the story is kind of just, we need to get to a certain point, so we had to keep going. So episode 5, Ozai. Ozai liking, quote unquote, not quote unquote, what's it called? Quotations, Zuko, and putting him And putting him and Azula against each other makes sense, but not how they are showing it. The show really infantilizes Azula by making him manipulate her how you would manipulate a little kid. Like, if you were like your brother, then this and that type of thing. More than Ozai always like praised Azula for being better, for being a prodigy, for being perfect. Which that would tell her subconsciously, I have to be this perfect, so Dad would like me. Like, she was always a fanatic for him, just not like the way they make her out to be. They make her look like a pick-me, basically, for her dad, instead of someone who's willing to do anything for them, but not like that. How they make it seem very kiddish. They kind of take away the agency that Azula has with her intelligence and cunningness from making her being so easily manipulated the way they are showing it. Which is another strong character that they're saying nope to. And to Uncle Iroh. How June calls him Uncle Iroh goes from being a creepy uncle to the cute dad by June, which is kind of like their little misogyny cleanup plan that they got going on. Again, June was a cool part of that they did. I like the way that little thing that she has looked, and also how they animated, like how they made it look. It looked cool. Like what they do good, they do good. But what they don't do good, they just make it's bad. It's either they get stuff really good, a lot of it's okay, and then what's bad is like really bad. And that's from this episode, especially. This is probably this is where it goes bad for me. This might be my least favorite episode because of how they do the spirit world. This is kind of why when Korra came out and season 2 came out, I dropped Korra because of how bad they were doing the spirit world and how they made the spirits go from these fantastical, intelligent beings to like these blob things. That's how I felt while watching this. Adding the other spirit from the future, at first I was like, why do it? Now, like looking back, they could do it to foreshadowing, because at first when they showed the owl, I'm like, we're not getting the library. We're for sure not getting the library. Because the whole point of the library, well, not the whole point. Well, one of the points also being that I don't think we're getting the library is, one, they're not bringing up any of the like invasions of like the comet coming back, instead of like at the end, I think they talked about it, or like the Black Sun. More importantly, I don't think we're gonna probably get that because they're not bringing up the importance of Aang having to do all this stuff. The owl, obviously, we already got him, so they probably like, oh look, we gave you the owl, so we're not gonna give you the library. Where it's a big character development episode for Aang because he loses Appa and Toph because of that too. That like guilt of letting Appa get taken. But it makes sense now if they are like foreshadowing us seeing the owl later on. But again, he wasn't needed. We didn't need to know the owl before meeting him in the library. Which is like, they're just putting stuff in that takes up time, which they say they need, or they're already fighting for. Which low-key they don't, because they're already skipping a whole episode with not putting in the Great Divide, or the Long Divide, or whatever. And also cutting out all the like unnecessary stuff from season 1. And okay, so the forest spirit was just kind of there. Like literally he shows up and then is gone. Like the village too, like we never get to see any of that again. Or the spirit, like he looked really cool. Like when they do what they do good, they do good. The forest spirit looked really cool. I think he was probably one of my favorite ones of the spirits for sure. Or just creatures that they made. Him and but he literally just attacks them and is never shown again. They imply, obviously we know that because of the acorn, the force is gonna come back, and like, we know why he's not gonna get angry again, but that's what I'm curious if first watchers connected that. Because it's not even like, why would they know? Because they were more focused on having Khan there. Also, why was he here? It wasn't necessary. I think they needed a crutch to have Aang be alone in next episode, and also him going to Roku, which I will talk about. Was it in the next episode? I think it's in the next episode. I have it in the next episode. So we'll just talk about Khan here, especially how they mess him up. Why change the lore of a show? Like, it just wasn't necessary. The whole point of Khan is him being a face stealer. If you show emotion, yet they're all showing emotion. Like, it just wasn't even talked about, hinted. It was just, yeah, he's a face stealer. He took them because he needed to feed on people. They could have easily just had the forest spirit take Sokka and Katara if they wanted to separate Aang from them to make him go to Roku's island, have him hold them. They didn't even need to put Khan there. At first I was okay, so they're probably have him here so we know who he is when we see him later on, where they should have just left him at. But they didn't because they decided to do some other stuff that we'll talk about later. Like I said, what they do good, they do good. He looked cool. But again, what's the point of having something there if it's just gonna look cool? And then they have Gyato there too. It's just, I feel like they put too much Gyato in the whole show. Like, we get it. Like, they're trying to beat you that this was Aang's best friend and that Aang misses them a lot. But like, they overdo it. I feel like that's why Aang doesn't feel as connected in this series as he does to the other one, to Katara and Sokka, because they're more focused on building bonds that are no longer there and aren't necessary for the story to keep moving instead of focusing on the new ones. That's why Aang kind of feels like trapped in the past more, I guess you could say. So episode 6. Roku was okay. Like, the actor, like this whole scene, it was very rushed. Honestly, you could have just said, I went there and I came back. It was very rushed. Them adding stuff from the books, like, I know the Mother of Faces is from the books. Like, I don't really know all the lore. I just know about her. I don't think it was necessary. Why add it? It was just more runtime getting taken out. And just for Khan, he wanted the statue back. I don't know what it means for him, if it's actually in the books about, like, the statue of her. But, like, I think she's, like, created him. But, like, they easily could have just had, again, Katara and Sokka get taken by the Forest Spirit and kept by him. And then him needed to, like, learn about the Forest Spirit to go to Roku. And then they could have just done the exact same plot that they did. Cut out Khan, him go to Roku, coming back, get trapped, played it the same way. He comes back, gives the acorn, he frees the people. Because was it the Forest Spirit that was taking them, or was it Khan at this point? Because the whole point was that the Forest Spirit was taking, and then Khan was stealing from the group in the thing that later on. Again, Zuko's fights looking good. I think one of the cool fights was at the Amashu I didn't talk about earlier. That kind of showed, like, the kiddishness or, like, the funness of the animated show, like the fight between Aang and Zuko. But I think Aang should have, like, they just don't make him, like, laugh. Like, he would have laughed at Zuko getting hurt. But yeah, let's just move on. Again, like, I just don't really like Iroh. I don't like him. He's very, like, rude, like, condescending. How he is to, like, the main officer that we interact with, or talks to Zuko with the Cyberns. How they wouldn't know sacrifice. Like, if they haven't sacrificed by being on that ship, or they wouldn't know sacrifice. Like, they're an average person in a war, but they don't know sacrifice. These royals telling him that they don't know sacrifice. Okay. I think they could have made it better by saying, like, that you don't know the pain that Zuko's gone through. Would be better than saying that they don't know sacrifice. Like, little change in the lines of Iroh's lines can make him look like a better character, or sound like a better character than what they're saying. Losing the two storms kinda didn't like, because it is, like, one of my favorite episodes. And also, like, with the resentment or, like, the guilt of Aang leaving, that shows a lot in the episode. But that leads to them needing that little talk that they have in the hut. But also the escape scene, I think, was done really, really well. That whole thing with the Blue Spirit, I think, was done really good. That's where, like, the show, like, when I said it was climbing, like, it was good, and then, like, it kind of falls off. And then it has, like, the good parts, and then it goes back down again, and, like, up and down for, like, the rest of the show. But, like, it never climbs back up how it was in, like, the first 3 episodes. But having them talk to each other so much was kind of, it just felt weird or off. Where the animated show, they were more talking to each other when they were unconscious, like when Zuko was unconscious and Aang was telling him about being friends. We didn't have to have them talk to each other for them to sympathize with each other or Aang with Zuko. It was more hand-holding with Aang understanding him than Aang just knowing. And this one also, what they're trying to do with Ozai. They're trying to like sympathize with Ozai when this man is the man that literally burnt his kid's face, was willing to kill his son to be the Fire Lord. But yet they try to like make him, or I don't know if it's just the actor's portrayal that he feels bad for burning Zuko's face. I don't like that part. I already know where they're going with that. I don't like what they're gonna do with Ozai for the sake of giving like great characters, because they want to be like great Game of Thrones, which explains episode 1 and a lot of the stuff that's been happening. Episode 7, Aang still never learns waterbending. Consequence of kind of like Roku not having Aang, or Aang not having Roku to teach him about the stuff, and then just they're going off a notebook. The whole point of the Avatar is for him to know the 4 elements, but yet it's episode 7 and Aang still hasn't learned waterbending. At this point also, Katara has no character other than being, I'm a strong girl who must learn waterbending to be a warrior. Yue. Now let's get to Yue. I didn't talk about her in, what was it, episode 5 or 4 with Sokka. And you can kind of tell by this whole thing that I haven't really been talking about Sokka, even though this is basically the Sokka show. Why make her a fox? Why? And also speaking about the fox, having them in the spirit world makes me think that they're going to take out the swamp episode in season 2. And they're probably going to make a different way to meet Toph than the swamp episode. Probably be like through another avatar telling her that he needs to learn from this girl or something. Or they just going to run into her with them adding that like spiritual episode already. Because we get that with Katara and her mom scene, which is in the swamp, kinda. I guess Yue and Sokka, we got that. And then when it's just Aang and Toph. But like they just switched Aang with being with Khan. Makes me think that we're not gonna have the swamp episode. But back to Yue. Again, even if they wanted her in the spirit, like they could have just made her a moon or something like that with the moon dress. That also back to the misogyny. We're going back to the misogyny topic right here with agency. So is the North misogynistic and doesn't believe that the women are strong and all this stuff? Or does it give someone like Yue the agency to decide not to be married to someone because feminism? It also makes her a waterbender. Why? Because she needs more agency. She needs to be strong. These people don't have strong female characters, right? So we're gonna make the princess strong. So is the North not misogynistic and not make only women learn waterbending and then not be able to decide who they're gonna marry? Or what? Because also the necklace, like Katara's necklace that I'll get into when she's fighting Paku. Them building random characters arcs and not the main characters, also giving Zuko's general dude more character development, and Yue's man that's not her man's character development, and Momo and some of the avatars at this point was kind of like getting to me. Aang also not wanting Katara to fight because he would be worried about her, where he was her number 1 supporter in the animated show, not willing to not learn waterbending, even if it meant that he wouldn't learn waterbending at all from a master, which he needs because he's an avatar, but didn't because Katara told him to do it. That same guy, or that same kid, was telling Katara not to fight? Okay. Also, Azula, a weird, not good enough story. How they make her, again, infantilizing her like she's not calm, collected, and calculated. They make her over emotional again. I don't remember if I already said that. I think I left for this part. How I didn't like, because like the acting in the show isn't bad. Just how they play the character. Like they made Azula over emotional, over reactive. Where in the show, like she's supposed to be very calm and collected. She's supposed to be, her whole thing is about her being perfect. Where she does show emotion, it's more fear based to cause fear. Where this, it was very expressive. She was just very emotional. Like she couldn't control her emotion. Like that's not supposed to be the scary Azula. She's they make her very fanatic for Ozai in a very weird way again. It's very weird, and also the lightning bending. No, they could have easily just made it like how they did in the show, like connecting the energy to create the lightning, but they made like a little hop, little dance thing that she did. It was whatever. Now to Katara needing Sokka's little like push to fight Paku. Again, like we had to show that he's not misogynistic, but yeah, take agency away from Katara. Their little fight, I think that's probably the only fight that looks kind of off was more because like of the wiring than anything, but like also it's not bad either. It was probably like one of the worst ones. But also the point of the necklace. What's the point of Katara's necklace and her having it if it means nothing, especially in this fight? It's basically just there for the people who know. Because did the grandma leave because the North was misogynistic and she was gonna get betrothed? Or not? They obviously still wear these necklaces because Yue had one and Katara still was wearing one, so what's the purpose of her having it? Also, still no waterbending by the end of this episode. Bye. So, episode 8. Katara getting the girls to provide backup, basically, and still, like, not getting trained. She's basically just... This one I'm just gonna go kind of towards the end, honestly. So let's start with, like, Ice Moon. Why have... Okay, it's an Ice Moon. Let's just call it an Ice Moon, okay? It appears that one night, okay, we'll just have that too. Them having Momo get more character development than Katara was something. Honestly, they probably had that scene in order just to get to the garden, the spiritual garden, because they needed to get there for some reason, because they never added it before with Aang being there. So they needed something to get them to be able to go over there for then later for the whole little koi fish scene. Because Aang doesn't go there to meditate or anything. Or he's not taken from there at all. He's not even taken in the first place. Which kind of, as like later, Zuko's tired statement kind of doesn't hit as hard because he did do a lot of work, obviously, with swimming back from the boat and swimming in the ocean. Not like a pool. He's swimming in the ocean to get back to a boat and all the stuff he did. But like in the animator, it felt kind of more, it hit more because he did all of that. Did that again. Swam to like where the seals were, swam with the seals, swam up, sneaked in, got Aang, carried Aang, left, went to a cave. And it made more sense that he was tired. Because after that, he still went back and fought. Also, that's me being nitpicky. I'm just gonna kind of skip to the end where Aang... Oh yeah, they added like some weird little... a knife from one of the avatars. I don't know if that's in the books. I never read the books. It probably is. Of the waterbending avatars. Knife. They added that, which is not a big deal. But I think the whole little ocean and moon spirit scenes didn't hit as hard because they isolated like everyone out. They weren't all there. And then also Iroh's line was kind of like misplaced where it should have been after the fact. Or was it before the fact that he hit it? Like he said it before he did it or after. I don't remember, but like they missed the pacing. Iroh saying that he would unleash tenfold or whatever kind of didn't hit as much because like he already did it or he was about to do it. I don't remember. But yeah, them making the ocean spirit a vengeful spirit, how he took Aang instead of it being like a unity type thing of consensual type thing, I guess you could say. They kind of did the Aang scene. Like that scene always gives me chills in the animated show. I liked how they made it black, how the sky went black. That I think they made cool. The kaiju also looked pretty good. People were saying it looked a lot like Godzilla. Like, it's not that bad. That was good. I just don't like how they made the ocean spirit a vengeful spirit of how Aang would never come back again. Like, why? I think it was more to build suspense than anything else. But, like, people didn't know. Like, we know he's coming back, bro. Like, what are you doing? And also the soundtrack for the kaiju, like when Aang was in the koi fish, I feel like they messed it up. They messed up like the fantastical element of it. Towards the end, when they added it, like they changed the song. They should have just kept it for the whole thing because it felt more fantastical or spiritual, you could say, than it feeling. It just felt like Godzilla or like King Kong attacking ships. The song-wise, not the actual kaiju. And having Zhao die by, I think, aeroblasting him, kind of just, like, it wasn't full circle of how the ocean spirit takes him in the animated show. It kind of just felt, okay, next thing, let's move on. And that was kind of it, which brings me to the ending. Katara never trained. What was the point of her coming here? She was never going to train. She's just a master without anyone ever teaching her anything. She just learned waterbending from that fucking scroll at this point. So there was no point of them coming to the north other than to, oh yeah, Aang needed to protect them so he didn't have another thing happen like to the airbenders. So, which also takes away, like they were just trying to build up Katara to be this prodigy of waterbending. So what was the point of her fighting Pakku to be trained if she's just gonna be a master? Which also the line of Zuko, which they kept from the animated show, him saying that she found a master, but she didn't. It was just her being her master, I guess. At this point, also, the gang has no bond. Like I said earlier, they just feel like they're just there. Like they just like feel like they're just there because they have to be there. There's no bond between all of them. Especially in Katara, like basically the only scenes we get of them two alone are them talking about waterbending and how Aang's telling her what the monks tell him about waterbending. Other than that, we get zero, which kind of leads to Katara's end monologue of getting him out of the kaiju. Kind of meaningless because I think the speech wasn't bad, and they kind of took that speech that was supposed to be where in the beginning of episode 1, where she was supposed to take him out of the Avatar state over there, they moved it over here, but it's kind of meaningless here because there's no bond. It means nothing. The words she's saying don't mean anything because there's no bond there to reflect what she's saying. Even in the beginning of the animated show, we already can tell how much Katara rides for Aang. How, like, the bond's already there between Aang and Katara and why she's able to take him out. How she's telling him that she hasn't lost a family, that they're their new family. They're his new family. Which kind of is why also Aang is so tied to the past in this one, because we don't get that. We don't get that till now. Or in the other one we got in the beginning. Which is why it kind of doesn't hit as hard here. Even though, like, the acting was good, the scene was good, the speech wasn't bad either, but it just doesn't hit. With leading later on to, like, Katara. Like, Katara literally rides for Aang. If we're gonna say one thing is she rides for him. Like, this coming from the girl who is literally willing to take people out for Aang if they're willing to hurt Aang. So also why they, basically one of their biggest hate crimes is how they basically just destroyed Katara's strong female character. They took away the motherly, strong, passionate, caring, protective character that is Katara and just made her basically Sokka's little sister that wants to learn waterbending. If we're being honest, she has like no passion in any of the things she's doing. And it's not even like the actor. I'm not even criticizing the actor. It's like the acting isn't bad in the show, that's what I'm saying. It's the character development that is bad. Like, how do you take such a strong character and then break them down just to being this one thing? Which is also goes to the gang, which leads to like Sokka. This was basically the Sokka and Zuko show, which makes sense because we need a lot of character development to make Zuko like turning later on. But like Sokka gets more character development than Aang and Katara put together. They literally show him more scenes of Sokka than the other two, or build him up more, you could say, more than the other two. I mean, I already went over this, but like also Aang never learned waterbending, and like this is book 1, so next season they're gonna have to have him learn waterbending and earthbending in one season, which they could do before he meets Toph, but it's kind of like, if they were worried about stuff being rushed, why do that? And that was kind of all my hot takes from the show. And this isn't to say that like there was good things I liked of the show I just didn't talk about. For example, like Zuko's crew being from like the people that he saved was a good thing. The Blue Spirit was a cool thing. Also how they combined the episodes. Smart, but not executed right. Oh wait, I forgot to talk about Yue. How that scene I wish they animated her like how they did in the show, but that's kind of it. Again, giving more character development to Yue's man than to Katara or Aang, with him dying. Like, it's just, if you're running out of time, why give these side characters, also the kid that called Katara Master, like, why give them like so much screen time, or like not even screen time, character development? Girl, you're focusing on the wrong character. But that was my overall take on the show for the most part. I think if you, I don't know why you would watch this, but if you haven't, I think you should watch it, because like, it's not a bad show. It's okay. It's not good, but it's also not bad. It's an okay show, and I'm glad they got season 2 and season 3. Like, I will be watching season 2. Hopefully it gets better. I want it to be better. Like, going into the show, I wanted it to be good. Hearing that the original creators left made me second guess it, but like, I still watched it wanting to enjoy it. But I'm not gonna come up here and say I loved it for the sake of saying I loved it when I didn't. Also want to, like, would people think this show is good if we didn't have something so bad to compare it to, is another thing. But I will be watching the second season. I think watching the second season will depend if I watch season 3, but I'm definitely watching season 2. I just hope they do better. Honestly, like, as long as they build up Katara, because they can still fix the stuff that like they messed up in season 2. Like, they could hear what people are saying and fix the stuff that needs to be fixed if they wanted to. But yeah, that's kind of everything I wanted to talk about. Also, they were so focused on them building a show for adult, yet the show holds your hand more than the animated show made for kids. Also, just to add, like, Aang, the whole show, like, Aang's the main character, but yet, like, we don't feel anything with him because he's always talking in monologues, which takes away why he doesn't feel that much as a kid. Overall, I would say the characters are just soulless, and a little bit of the world building is as well, which is why the show doesn't feel like the show, because none of the characters are behaving like they would. They're not there, like, physically they're there, but emotionally, or the way, their purpose of why they do the things they do aren't there, but they're doing them anyway. I forgot to add that they didn't make Azula's fire blue. I almost turned off the TV. I almost had to turn off the TV. And also that with all the stuff at the Northern Water Tribe, that with the spirits and everything, how it had to be one night and it had to be on this certain event, and that they like came down just because it was a special event, the moon and everything, the ice moon, and it was just for a day. And making the ocean spirit vengeful was just to add suspense. Literally, that was it. Because they wanted it to be more suspenseful, that Aang wouldn't come back, or like this event only would happen one time a year. That was like the whole purpose of them adding that little change of lore, because it literally doesn't add anything else to the show or the lore, because there's already lore there in the first place that they came down to become. They gave up their immortality to live amongst the humans and stuff like that. They could have just done that, but that doesn't build suspense. That's not gonna make people think that Aang's gonna die. I still don't know how I'm going to be making videos. I don't know if I liked this format because it did feel more natural, but I missed a lot of stuff because I was just going off bulletin points and not a full script. So I don't know if I'm gonna keep it. I don't sound as robotic, but yeah, I don't like the fact that I keep missing stuff. And also, I don't know how I'm gonna do the visual part of the videos because I didn't really like doing it, or maybe because I didn't plan it out. I was kind of just winging it too on the visual side. That was kind of it for what I got. Let me know what you think. Did you like it? You didn't like it? What you liked? What you didn't like? Are you gonna watch season 2? Are you not gonna watch season 2? And remember, all I do is lie.